Now on BBC One Northern Ireland, Real Lives Reunited remembers a tragedy in 2011 when a routine flight from Belfast to Cork crashed, killing 6 of those on board.
Extraordinary stories from a shared past.
There was 12 people on board the aircraft that day. 6 of us made it, 6 of us didn't.
Bonds forged in tragedy and triumph.
The little girl that you helped 15 years ago.
Brought together by fate.
It just overwhelmed me a bit.
But separated by time.
God, where did all those years go?
Decades on, we reunite them. The phrase life or death situation's probably one that's much overused. But that's exactly what happened to the 2 men in our first story, when back in 2011 they survived a devastating plane crash. And today, finally, they're going to get the chance to thank the rescuers who saved their lives. On the morning of the 10th of February 2011, a routine flight was scheduled to leave Belfast City Airport bound for Cork. Brendan Mallon from Bangor was a regular flyer on the route and booked on board that day.
I was going to be spending a couple of days down there. I worked in the travel business and we had a travel agency in Bandon.
Fellow passenger Lawrence Wilson remembers the fog that morning being the worst he'd ever seen.
I live in Glencoe and it's in a valley. Well, it was absolutely pea soup. It was, you couldn't have seen your finger in front of you. I remember driving really, really slow, particularly bad.
Despite the weather, the 19-seater Flight 7100 would leave as planned.
It was just 2 single lines of seats. So I went to sit at the first seat on the left-hand side. I felt that was a little bit too close to where the cockpit curtain was. I then went to sit in the second seat behind that, but then found that the third seat I thought had a little bit more legroom in it, so that's why I eventually ended up in that seat.
I think if I had been first on the plane, I would have been right in behind the pilot, but because them seats had already been taken, I ended up sitting just behind the wing.
The Manx 2 plane left Belfast with 10 passengers and the 2 pilots on board just after 8 o'clock in the morning. As they began their descent into Cork, it was clear the airport was experiencing the same fog as Belfast.
You might as well open your eyes in a dark room. You see nothing. It was just that foggy. And the first sign of trouble was that the plane actually started to just come back up. Now, not a big sudden go, but it came back up through the cloud.
Minutes later, they started to descend again.
All of a sudden, the plane just went straight up into the air, like as on a real, like more than 45, just a real tight one up out. And everybody, whoa, that's whenever everybody went, whoa, that wasn't good.
At one point, one of the pilots came back and announced to everybody that there was fog at the airport and we were going to have to go into a holding pattern for a period of time.
So after 20 minutes, the curtains opened again, and I remember the pilot going, just thumbs up, that's it, we're going for it. So at that stage, I did really pay attention because it hadn't happened to me before. Then all of a sudden I just seen grass, and the grass would have been, I'm guessing, like sort of 10 feet. And I knew we were going far, far too quick.
I looked out the window to my right-hand side. I just saw grass. That would have been at the moment that the plane tipped onto its side, and that's the last memory that I have.
The emergency crash siren was sounded, and at the airport's fire station, new recruit Gary Feely was about to experience firsthand what he'd been trained to do.
I never expected my first incident to be a baptism of fire.
With the fog so thick on the ground, not even air traffic control were able to identify where the plane had landed. But a snap decision by the team on one of the fire engines to head out towards a particular section of runway 17 would prove incredibly lucky. On board, Station Officer John McCarthy.
It was just luck really that we decided to go that way. It was extremely foggy, you could see the length of your nose really. But just as we went through taxi with Charlie, you could see it glow in the distance.
The plane had flipped over at high speed and careered down the runway for nearly 200 metres before coming to a stop on the grass alongside. The front fuselage had been crushed on impact, and with the passengers suspended upside down and strapped into their seats, mud and water began gushing into the cabin, filling the already squeezed space.
So we're fighting for air, and the gutters come up to, I'm sure, over my waist, so I was actually drowning.
But that wasn't all. Both of the plane's engines had caught fire. The panic now was to get the passengers out.
And you could hear the guy in the back screaming, "It's on fire, it's on fire." You obviously thought that was it, your number's up. Did I think I was going to die? Yes, I did.
With just moments to spare before the fires spread to the cabin, 2 teams of firefighters were able to put the blaze out.
If it was a training exercise, it possibly would be the worst scenario you could get.
Carnage. That's what it was. Yeah, you knew. There was people that you knew were dead.
We got a crowbar, we went to the whole door at the back of the aircraft and broke open the whole door.
Whenever I heard the banging, I just shouted, "Yes, there's people here, to let them know that there was somebody living."
Extremely tight space inside. The mud was after coming in the front, and we had to just crawl our way in.
Couldn't get my hand down in to actually pull the buckle forward, and I was trying hard, like pushing, and I couldn't do it.
When we got to Lawrence, he was strapped into his seat upside down, so we cut him off. We cut his seatbelt to remove him from his seat.
The rescue team went about freeing those they knew to be alive.
The silence that was there. It was as if everyone was busy doing what they were doing. There was so much happening, but yet it was so quiet.
Ambulances took the injured to hospital, but 6 bodies were recovered. 4 passengers and the 2 pilots had not survived the crash.
Just when I stepped out and seen the carnage, I realised how lucky I was to be able to actually walk away from it.
Brendan Mallon has no memory of the drama unfolding. Today, for the first time, he'll hear from his rescuer exactly what happened.
It will be probably difficult to hear, but I think now, 5+ years on, I'm probably in the right state of mind to hear it and to deal with it.
Brendan and Lawrence are once more travelling to Cork Airport, this time by train. They'll be reunited for the first time with the men who put their own lives at risk that day, 5 years ago, to save their lives.
For me, the big thing is being able to express my gratitude for what was done that day. It was courageous, it was professional, it was, why I'm possibly sitting here today.
Yeah, it'd be nice just to shake hands with them. I think that'll be good.
At Cork Airport, and in a coincidental twist, the fog has returned just like that fateful morning.
It's like deja vu. Definitely makes it surreal with the fog and stuff still being here. But a bit daunting.
Waiting airside to meet them, firefighters John and Gary, who were the first on the scene that day.
All right.
Pleasure to meet you.
Lovely to meet you.
Welcome.
Lawrence.
Gary.
Gary, you're Gary. You're
Lawrence,
John.
is it?
I'm Lawrence. I'm Lawrence. Gary.
So, back together again?
Yes, indeed.
After 5 years.
5 years.
Under much better circumstances.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
we were just a recruit that day.
I was.
That was the end
I was a new recruit.
the end of a training session.
Yeah.
With the real thing.
That was like the final exam.
I'd say from your point of view, it was a surreal experience actually.
Brenton says to me, I think I was absolutely
My
completely
first
gone.
memories were from some point over the next day or two in Cork University Hospital with the little flashes, so it took a while for my brain to start working reasonably like normal again.
Brendan, you would have been too far up the plane in the wreckage to get to you.
I have no memory. I wasn't even sure if I was conscious or unconscious at the time.
Yeah,
I've got no memory.
You were talking to us.
I was conscious, right?
Yeah,
okay.
You were conscious.
Yeah, we were just reassuring you that we'd be getting up to you. We said that we'd have to release 1 or 2 first before we could actually get up to you.
Thank you very much for if it wasn't for your expertise on the day, we wouldn't have been having this today. So it was your expertise that got us out, and that's the bottom line. So thank you very much.
Oh,
there's a total team effort, and
team
we're only
effort,
two
just
of
doing our job.
There
was,
yeah,
there's 20 plus of us there.
Photographs taken soon after the crash allow the firefighters to explain what they had to do to get the survivors out.
Can you remember whereabouts I would have been?
Brendan, you would have been around this area, inside the engine.
It's crazy looking at that, man.
With that angle, Lawrence would have been on the other side because the aircraft
yes, it's upside down. Terrible. This must have been
2 days after.
2 days after it, they picked it up.
Whereabouts did you guys manage to come in to try and to get people out from?
This was our entry point here through the cargo hold door.
Okay.
There was another entry point cut in here at the side. Brendan, I think this is where you were.
Right, yeah, okay.
Around here.
It's crazy looking at that, man.
But you know, it's horrific whenever you see all the crew and look at the many peoples here. Awful.
The reality of just how lucky they are to be alive is really hitting home. And after 5 years of not knowing, Brendan is beginning to learn about his rescue. Later in the programme, he'll meet the man who pulled him from the plane and finally complete the jigsaw of what happened to him on that day. On the 10th of February 2011, a plane travelling from Belfast crash-landed at Cork Airport, killing 6 of the 12 people on board. Firefighters from all over Cork were directed to the airport. A team of over 30 worked to get survivors out of the stricken plane. Today, 2 of the survivors of the crash, Brendan Mallon and Lawrence Wilson, are in Cork to say thank you to those who rescued them. Brendan, who has no recollection of the tragic events, is keen to learn how he was rescued.
The exact whys and wherefores of how I was cut out, if I was cut out, and who dragged me out, and whether I was conscious in any way, shape or form at that stage, no, that's something I don't know, and part of me would like to know that. Part of me probably is a little concerned about knowing that as well.
Brendan is going to meet face to face for the first time the man who pulled him out of the plane and finally learn what happened to him on that day in 2011. Firefighter Michael Lynch is based at the nearby Bencully fire station. He'd been out shopping when his pager went off, telling him to report to base.
None of us in the station would have attended a plane crash before, so this was going to be all new to us. We didn't know how big a plane it was or how many people were there, so it was pretty intense at the time. The adrenaline sits in a bit and you realise, that you're going to something very serious. You have to kind of set that aside and get into work mode.
Once at the airport, Michael's team were directed out to the crash site and into the overturned plane.
I heard a person shouting out, who I now know was Brendan Mallon, and he had serious injuries and he was in serious pain because he was roaring and shouting, get me out of here, get me out of here. And so I had to make room and cut away some other seats at the time.
On the day, Brendan made a snap decision not to sit at the front of the plane. He knows that's likely to have saved his life.
Other people did sit in those seats afterwards, and they and their families aren't as lucky as me and mine at the moment, and that is something that always is in the back of the mind, and I'm always very conscious of that.
He was trapped in such a small space, the firefighters had to use special cutters to rip out the seats in front before they could get to him.
I would have carried him out the first bit, and there would have been 2 lads that were positioned behind me. Between us then we would have taken him out of the plane and handed him over then to the paramedics.
Brendan was taken to Cork University Hospital and would spend the next 3 weeks there and in the Royal Victoria Hospital in Belfast. He had more than a dozen broken bones, including one in his neck that was millimetres away from killing or paralysing him.
Looking at that wreckage of the plane, seeing where I would have been sitting and seeing what way that part of the plane was crushed down, that was actually a very difficult thing to see, to think and to understand that I had got out of that was difficult to get my head around.
Until today, Brendan has always believed he was unconscious throughout the whole rescue, but he's learned that he was awake and talking. Now he's going to meet for the first time Michael Lidge, the firefighter who got him out.
Nice to meet
At
you,
long
Brendan.
last. How are you keeping?
Good. Michael Lidge, nice to meet you.
How are you?
Good. I remember you now, all right. Actually
Good.
seeing the face now
It's
again.
like, because today is the first day in 5 years that I've realised that I was actually conscious. Throughout that, I've got absolutely no memory at all.
We'll try and help you fill in a bit of the
well, that's what I was
blanks.
hoping to try and catch on to. It's really hard to get my head around the fact that that bit of the fuselage that was so squished down, that's where I was and other people were. It's just
You were actually
unbelievable.
squashed down inside there, like, and I could see that your neck was bent over, like, and so there was very little room to move inside there, like. Well, I would think that you were probably unconscious for a while because.
Oh, right, okay.
Because we were in there for a good 10 minutes before we heard you calling at all, because we were trying to get somebody else out at the time.
Okay.
And that's when we heard you screaming and calling for help, and you were conscious then. I had a little conversation when we did meet.
Right, okay.
And when I got to initially, and all you were saying to me was, "I'm sorry, I'm apologising for shouting and for roaring, and for you were asking to get me out of here, like." And you kept apologising to me to say, I'm sorry, like, which was kind of,
Can I apologise again if I was shouting at you?
Not at all, because I mean, we were just trying to get you out as quick as we could. Like, I knew you were in serious pain, and I knew you obviously would have had serious injuries, but I couldn't see any, physical injuries on you. Like,
it was a hard road. There's no doubt about that. But I was well looked after by people in the hospitals, and my wife and family and friends all looked after me well. From my point of view and my family's point of view, we're eternally grateful to yourself and to everybody that was involved in the rescue here, because without that hard work and dedication and professionalism, I probably wouldn't be here today. So genuinely from the heart, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Okay.
Why did I survive that day and others didn't is a question, again, that I've been asked quite a lot. It's a difficult one to answer because some people weren't that lucky. Why was I lucky and others weren't? There's no balance there. I think it was just one of those things that was pure luck.
Luck or fate, Lawrence Wilson and Brendan Mallon owe their lives to the team on the ground at Cork that February morning.
I'm a survivor. They're the guys that need the praise. Between the rescuers and this rescue service and the Cork University Hospital, them's the people that need the praise in this. We're only there, happened to be there at the time.
Reunited at last, and now they can piece together the traumatic moments of their past and say thank you to the people who gave them back their futures.
And next here on BBC One Northern Ireland, Anthony Joshua's Road to Klitschko.